Do you want to build your first customized emitter and use it in any form you like? Hello, friends. In this tutorial, I want to teach the basics of working with Niagara and Unreal Engine, so stay with me. All right, friends, let's go ahead and create our first Niagara system in Unreal. You can create it by right-clicking in the content browser and selecting Niagara. As soon as it opens, it shows a lot of different templates that we can choose from, but in this tutorial, I want to start from scratch. So we create an empty system. As you can see, by opening it, the Niagara window opens, which has its own specific UI that includes the viewport, details, the timeline bar, and parameters. So that you understand it better, I add a default fountain emitter so I can explain things using it. Now let's see what the emitter does. In Niagara, the emitter is the core component for generating and controlling particles. Simply put, the emitter determines what gets created, particles, how many get created, when they get created, how they behave, movement, size, color, lifetime, etc. Every effect we see, from smoke and fire to sparks, rain, dust, or fantasy effects, is ultimately built from one or more emitters. As you can see, we can see the result of the emitter on the left side of the viewport, where we can rotate, zoom, and so on. On the right side, we have the Details panel, which shows the related settings by selecting each of the emitter options. All right, let's see what these options actually are. The first option is Emitter Spawn, which doesn't have anything special and simply spawns the emitter. But the next option is Emitter Update, which has several subcategories. The first one is Emitter State, which shows where the emitter is spawned, and the next one is Spawn Emitter, where by changing its value we can control the number of particles being generated. For example, if we decrease it, as you can see, the number of generated particles decreases, and if we increase it, they will increase. As you can see in the timeline bar, we currently have a fountain. Now, if we want to add another emitter, we just need to right-click and, for example, create an empty emitter for which we can choose a name, and we will also see it in the timeline bar. We can enable or disable each one, and also use the little person icon on the emitter to isolate it, so we only see that one. We can add a spawn rate to the new emitter so that by assigning a value to it, we create the first particle for our custom emitter. Now let's check the next options and add them to our own emitter. The next option is Initialize Particle. The first setting in it is Lifetime, which, as its name suggests, determines how long the particles stay alive. In the random mode, we can set a random range, for example, a lower time of 0.2 to 0.4, and you can see the result. Or we can specify a higher time for them, so it works like a large fountain for us. Or we can set the mode to direct set so all particles have the same lifetime. The next option is Color, where we can give color to the particles. We can also use the Random Range option and randomly assign 2 colors to our particles. The next option gives us the no color state. The next option is Size, which works exactly like color, and we can set the particle size randomly or uniformly. In this section, we also have rotation settings, which we will cover later. The next option is particle state, which includes the kill option that fades out our particles after a few seconds. If we disable it and enable looping particle lifetime, they will continue indefinitely and stay alive. The next option is gravity force, which determines the amount of gravity. The real-world gravity value for Earth is minus 980. We can change it and reduce it. If we disable kill particle, as you can see, the particles rise much higher and then get affected by gravity. And if we increase the gravity, the particles gain less height and quickly fall down. The next option is scale color, and to make it more visible, I change the size. As you can see in its settings, we can control the size of the particles over time using a curve from spawn to the end of their life. For example, going from small to large or the opposite, or getting larger in the middle. We can also control them manually. Alright, let's see how we can add these features to our own emitter. For example, let's add gravity. We get an error saying that we don't have solve forces, and we can fix it by pressing Fix Issue, so Unreal automatically creates it. As you can see, the particles are pulled downward after being spawned. Now we can add a noise so that after gravity, the particles move based on the noise. We can even reverse the gravity so the particles move upward. But that's not logical, so I remove them to start properly. Like the fountain emitter, we need a shape location. I remove the noise and gravity. As you can see, the particles start spawning inside a sphere. And we can change the shape so the particles take on that form. We can also change the size of the shape. In the distribution settings, for example in the torus mode, you can have a half ring or apply any settings based on your project. In the Transforms menu, you can scale your shape and adjust it on the X, Y, and Z axis. The next option is Add Velocity, whose job is to give motion to our particles in a specific direction and speed. When we add it, the particles start moving upward because by default the z-axis velocity is set to 50. If we set it to 100, they will be pushed upward with more force. If we give a value to the y-axis, they will be pulled in that direction, and the same goes for the x-axis. Also, if we decrease the speed decreases, and if we increase it, the particle speed becomes very high. The next option is velocity modes, where by choosing from point we can make the movement spread outward from the center. We can also change its speed, and by changing the point size, we can see them better. The next mode is cone, which spreads the particles in a conical shape. By changing its axis, we can adjust the spread angle, increase the speed, and even control the amount of spread using the cone angle. Now let's add gravity. I increase the velocity speed settings and reduce the gravity amount for now. In Initialize Particle, I set the size to random to create smaller particles. I reduce the spawn rate. I also reduce the cone angle. In Shape Location, I reduce the sphere radius. Now we have something that looks like our own fountain. The next option is Drag, which you can use to create a softer, smoother effect for the particles and reduce irregular spreading and speed. Finally, you can use Scale Color to control the sizes linearly as well. Now you can place your fountain into the scene and adjust it however you like, or add it to any level you want. You can also use on a mesh in a scene, and even change its type and reach a form like this. Thanks a lot for watching the video. This is the first episode of our Niagara tutorial series, and in the upcoming parts we're going to cover Niagara step by step and in full detail. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and support the channel with super thanks.